Yo, what's good everybody? My name is Alckemy. Welcome to the channel. Today we are going to be talking about how to create a polyrhythmic arpeggiator in phase plant, kind of like this. It's pretty cool, and even though the sound itself isn't the most interesting thing, or the timbre of the sound isn't the craziest thing I've ever done, I do think that this changing and evolving rhythm is a really fun way to I don't know, just create a melody or something. Now, on one instance, the short version of this is that if you put an LFO on an LFO, then it's going to obviously change the rhythm of things. But I do want to cover this because it does get a little bit more in depth and it will get you something very specific. Whereas if you do what I just previously mentioned, the outcome is going to, well, it's going to sound a little bit different. So let's go ahead and reverse engineer this patch. And while I'm turning everything off, I'd really appreciate if you liked and subscribed to the video. Remember, once I hit 20K, we're doing a giveaway for Distube Culture. So if you want a really awesome distortion plugin for free, then enter for the chance or help me get there, and then I'll have everybody enter. So there's actually a little bit of a complicated part to this, and what that is the aggression knob. And what I'm doing here is really just starting off with a sine wave, as you can see here, or sorry, a saw wave, and that sounds like this. And you can see that it's kind of oscillating upwards, right? Not really doing anything crazy. But what I've done is on this, whenever we turn this up, this is going to do the opposite, to where it's going to pluck this with the original saw wave. And this isn't anything spectacular, but it is just kind of cool because it gives you a little bit of variation. But what I had to do with this was when I turn this knob on, as you can see, I have to turn the level down, turn the sustain up, and then add an LFO that are opposite to each other, because this is already playing, and when I turn the aggression off, this should be at 0, so it's not creating any noise. But then when I turn this up, this comes, does it come up? Yeah, it goes all the way down. We turn the sustain up, and that way it creates the pluck. So it's kind of weird just the way that you have to route that. I'm totally understand if that seems confusing to you. Hopefully that made some kind of sense. But yeah, if you have something that's consistent, but then you want to turn it into a pluck, then you would usually turn the volume down and then add the pluck, right? But if you do that and you add a modulator, then it doesn't quite work out. So that's why I had to design this that way. And maybe there was a happy accident within that. But anyways, this saw wave has a little bit of FM with another saw wave. It's nothing too crazy, just that. And then this macro here that says wide is controlling the detuning and the spread of both of these respectively. So if I want to turn this more into a Reese, then we could do that too. So the next part to this is really the magic, I guess, if you will. What this is doing is a couple of things. So first off, we have this LFO shape that's set to a minor octave. And what this is doing is being mapped to the semitones, or sorry, an octave here. So that way, if I just push one note, now the other thing that I have is this other LFO that's kind of ramping, but in a curve. And this isn't the most, original shape or whatever, but if you think about a stepper and then you just take this and go from here like this all the way down, then it'll create that curve. And this is actually being mapped to a filter, and that's what's going to change this into a pluck. So as you see here, this will move. Now, to get this to work, what you have to do is when you turn this macro off, you need to make sure that you're pushing this up. So that way, whenever the macro is off, it's going to play pretty much at full volume. And then when you turn this up, you're going to reduce the cutoff, and that way that'll activate what's going on here. I will also say that in between, this will kind of jump in between like weird and arbitrary pitches, so it's kind of like an on or off. You can use a remap. I didn't feel like doing that, but what can you say? So, and I think that is fine. So the other thing with this though is that all of these are in poly mode. So that way the distortion and all that other stuff is kind of being sent individually, and then the effects are just chorus, delay, distortion, compression. This slice EQ is kind of unique because what I'm doing is I've got this random here that is triggering or being triggered by this guy. And so what's happening is every time this hits at these peaks, it's going to trigger this into a different position of the slice EQ filter. And this isn't significant enough to where it's going to be drastically different, but it adds just enough randomized character to where it doesn't sound like the same every single time, even though like it's very nuanced. So we've also got some saturator, which is at 100% mix. We've also got some reverb, which you can turn on with the macro. And then we've also got a delay that you can turn on with the macro as well. So a couple of last things. The speed here has a macro in them, and what I've done is I've just turned all of these down to 4, so that way when this is at its top, it's going to be at its slowest, and then when it's at its bottom, it's going to be the fastest. So if you want a really fast arpeggiator, then you can do that too. But where the magic is this little Let's Rock thing, and what this does is it takes an LFO and modulates the speed of this. And I've used this kind of like mountain looking thing because I wanted to kind of hang out for a second before it goes back down. And so I've created that shape. But the significance behind this is that you map this LFO to the speed of this, and then you map the depth of this LFO to the macro. So that way, as you can see, if you look down at the bottom, when this is off, it closes the LFO, and that's how you can do complex modulation. I've got another video about that if anybody's interested. But once you have that and you play a couple of notes, then that's where you're going to get that varying speed. Which sounds pretty cool. Now, one thing I will say about this patch before we wrap this up is that you kind of want to be mindful about what notes you play with this, because this is bound by a minor scale. It doesn't necessarily bind it to a specific minor scale. So it's not like I can play any note and it's going to stick within C minor. It's basically saying if I play a C, it's going to play the minor of what's in C. If I play a C and a D sharp, it's going to play those two individually. So typically speaking, if you play fifths, then usually those overlap each other and sound really pleasing. But you can get away with a couple of like weird things, and I would say that you have to experiment. But start with one note and then push another one, see if it sounds good. But you know, sometimes you end up getting lucky and getting some weird stuff that's really cool. So that's 2 C's and a G. What happens if we hit B? See, it sounds kind of odd. So typically sticking with fifths is usually your best bet, or octaves, that works really well too. Or for whatever reason, if you want to experiment, change the scale and see what else that you can create to make just the weirdest kind of sounds or melodies that you possibly can. But in any case, this is really how it's done. This is kind of just a placeholder, and of course, like, you can set this to an arpeggiator instead if you want to where you can just turn this off and have these go and play chords. But I don't know, I kind of like this doing the octave thing or doing the pitch thing on its own too. But anyways, I guess I'm just saying that there's a lot of variation that you can have. And I guess the last takeaway that I want you all to leave with is that you can always modify the patch that I'm doing. And in fact, you should modify the patch that I'm showing you. You should like take the concept of it and figure out how it applies to you and your own creative skill set, as opposed to it being like, oh, it doesn't sound exact or whatever. That's, I don't know, that's like, if you're trying to just copy the patch exactly, to me, that's very narrow-minded. So instead, take what is inspiring to you from this patch and then make your own stuff, and hopefully you'll be on your way to creating your own cool sounds. So, long-winded, but anyways, thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. Let me know in the comments if you all have any tricks that you like to do with arpeggiators with Faceplant. And yeah, that's all I got. Be sure to like and subscribe, help me get to that giveaway, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.